My name is Emma, and this is the story of how I made the biggest mistake of my life. I met Daniel when I was 19. At the time, I wasn't looking for love. I was just a college student, working at a small bookstore to pay my bills. But then, Daniel walked into my life, and everything changed. He wasn't the richest or the most powerful man in the world. He didn't drive a fancy car or wear expensive suits. But he had the kindest heart I had ever known. He was a teacher, passionate, dedicated, and full of dreams. From the beginning, we had a simple kind of love. We didn't need expensive dates or luxurious gifts. Our happiness came from the little things. Walking in the park, holding hands, and talking about our future. Drinking cheap coffee in small cafes, laughing about silly things. Watching old movies at home, wrapped in the same blanket. Every time we were together, he made me feel like the most special person in the world. He would bring me flowers, not the expensive kind, just small, beautiful ones he picked on the way. One day, I will give you the world, Emma, he used to say. I always laughed when he said that because, to me, he was the world. We dreamed of a future together. We talked about getting married, buying a small house, and maybe having children. We knew we didn't have much money, but we had love, and that felt like enough. But love, I would soon learn, is not always enough. One night, Daniel and I were sitting on a bench in the park. It was late, and the sky was full of stars. He held my hand and said, Emma, I know I can't give you luxury, but I promise I'll work hard to give you a good life. Will you wait for me? I smiled and nodded. Of course, I would wait. I believed in us. I believed in love. But then, something unexpected happened. Something that made me question everything. And that was the beginning of my biggest regret. I still remember the day I met Ethan. I was working in the bookstore when he walked in. He was tall, confident, and elegant, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and a gold watch that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. I noticed the way people looked at him. His presence commanded attention. He moved with ease, like a man who was used to getting everything he wanted. And that day, he wanted me. He approached me at the counter, picked up a book, and smiled. Do you like working here? He asked. His voice was smooth, his smile charming. I was taken aback by his confidence. I do, I replied. I love books. That's nice, he said, placing his credit card on the counter. But don't you ever dream of more? His words stayed with me even after he left. The next day, I received flowers at the bookstore. No one had ever sent me flowers before except Daniel. But these were different. They weren't small, delicate flowers picked from a park. They were expensive, exotic, luxurious. A few days later, Ethan came back and invited me to dinner. At first, I refused. I told him I had a boyfriend, but he didn't give up. Just one dinner, he said. No pressure. I just want to get to know you. I don't know why, but I said yes. That night, he took me to a rooftop restaurant. The city sparkled below us, looking like something from a movie. Everything was perfect: the food, the wine, the music. I had never experienced anything like it before. As we sat there, Ethan looked at me and said, You are too beautiful and intelligent to live an ordinary life, Emma. I could give you everything you want. His words made me feel something I had never felt before: desire for more, for a better life, for security. For the first time, I questioned my future with Daniel. Yes, I loved him, but love didn't pay the bills. Love didn't buy a house or a car. Love didn't give me security. And when I talked to my friends and family about it, they only confirmed my doubts. You have to be realistic, Emma. Love is great, but it won't pay for your future. Think about what's best for you. I spent days thinking about it. On one side, there was Daniel, the man I loved, the man who made me happy. But on the other side, there was Ethan, the man who could give me stability, wealth, and a luxurious life. I felt trapped between my heart and my mind. And then, one night, I made my choice, a choice that I would regret forever. I had never seen Daniel cry before. When I told him I was leaving, he just stood there in silence. His hands trembled slightly, and his eyes, those warm, loving eyes, were filled with pain. "Why, Emma?" he finally asked. His voice was quiet, almost broken. I took a deep breath, trying to control my emotions. I had rehearsed this conversation in my mind 100 times, convincing myself that I was making the right decision. "Daniel, I need stability," I said. "I love you, but love isn't enough. I can't live my whole life struggling, hoping that one day things will get better. Ethan can give me a future, security, things you can't give me." He looked at me for a long time, as if searching for something, maybe a sign that I didn't mean what I was saying. "I would have given you everything, Emma," he said softly. "Maybe not in money, but in love." And I thought that was enough for us. I felt my heart break, but I forced myself to stay strong. If I hesitated, I would never go through with it. "I'm sorry, Daniel," I whispered. For a moment, I thought he would beg me to stay, that he would fight for me. But instead, he took a deep breath, nodded slowly, and stepped back. "If this is what you want, I won't stop you," he said. "But one day, Emma, one day, you will realize what you've lost." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. If I did, I would break. Marrying Ethan was like stepping into another world. One moment, I was a girl working in a bookstore, struggling to pay rent. The next, I was the wife of a wealthy businessman, living in a mansion with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a closet full of designer clothes. People looked at me differently now. They admired me, envied me. I had everything, at least. Everything I thought I wanted. But something felt off. Ethan was charming when we were dating. But after the wedding, something changed. He was always busy, always traveling, always talking about work. At first, I told myself it was normal. He was a businessman. After all, he had responsibilities. He's doing this for us, I thought. But deep down, a small voice whispered, or is he just doing it for himself? Nights felt empty. I would sit alone at our grand dining table, staring at the extravagant meals prepared by our private chef, waiting for Ethan to come home. Most nights, he didn't. And when he did, he barely looked at me. I had everything I once dreamed of, but for some reason, I felt more alone than ever. Had I really made the right choice? I woke up to an empty bed again. The space next to me was cold, untouched. Ethan had come home late, as always, and left early without saying goodbye. I sat up and looked around. The bedroom was enormous, high ceilings, elegant furniture, a view of the city skyline. Everything looked perfect, but it felt lifeless. I got up and walked through the house. The maids were already cleaning, the staff moving around like ghosts. No one spoke to me unless necessary. I went to the dining room. Breakfast was ready, fresh, Fruits, croissants, eggs, coffee, everything served on fine china. I sat alone, staring at the food. I missed Daniel. I missed the mornings when we would share a cup of cheap coffee, laughing about nothing. I missed our Sunday walks in the park, our silly conversations, the way he held my hand as if I was the most precious thing in the world. I had traded all of that for luxury, but luxury felt empty. Ethan didn't ask about my day. He didn't listen to my stories. He didn't make me feel special. To him, I was just another part of his perfect life, a beautiful wife to complete his image. One night, after another silent dinner, I finally asked him, "Ethan, do you love me?" He looked up from his phone, clearly annoyed. "Emma, what kind of question is that?" he said. "You have everything. Why are you not happy?" I swallowed hard. "I don't need money, Ethan. I need you." He sighed and shook his head. "You knew what this life was when you chose it. Stop being ungrateful." Ungrateful. That word stayed with me for days. Had I really chosen a life where love didn't matter? One afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. I needed air. I needed to clear my mind. And then, fate played a cruel trick on me. As I walked past a small coffee shop, I saw him. Daniel. He was sitting by the window, sipping coffee, laughing at something. And he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him, a beautiful woman with kind eyes. She leaned in, touched his hand, and he smiled at her. The same smile that used to be mine. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding. He looked happy, peaceful, in love. And at that moment, I realized the painful truth. I had lost him, and I had no one to blame but myself. I stood frozen in front of the coffee shop, my heart sinking as I watched Daniel laugh with her. The way he looked at her, the warmth in his eyes, the way he leaned in when she spoke was exactly how he used to look at me. I wanted to run, to hide, to pretend I hadn't seen them. But my feet refused to move. And then, as if sensing my presence, Daniel looked up. For a second, time stopped. Our eyes met, and 1,000 emotions flooded me all at once. I searched his face for something: pain, longing, maybe even anger. Anything that would tell me he still felt something for me. But there was nothing. Just calmness, acceptance, peace. He smiled politely and gave me a small nod. Not the warm, loving smile I used to know. Not the smile that once made me feel like the most important person in the world. Just a polite acknowledgement, like I was a stranger. I felt my chest tighten, my throat dry. I had imagined this moment so many times, what I would say if I saw him again. If I had the chance to explain, to apologize. But now, standing there, words failed me, because I knew the truth. Daniel had moved on, and I had lost him forever. I walked away before the tears could fall, my heart heavy with regret. For the first time, I truly understood the weight of my choices. I had traded love for luxury, security for passion, a warm heart for a cold mansion. And what did I have now? A husband who barely noticed me, a house that felt more like a prison, a life that looked perfect from the outside but was completely empty inside. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My hair was styled perfectly, my dress was elegant, and my jewelry sparkled under the light. But my eyes looked hollow. I had everything I once thought I wanted, but I had never felt so lost. I didn't leave Ethan. Not immediately. Divorce in his world was complicated, messy, calculated, and filled with lawyers and negotiations. But something changed in me that day. I no longer cared about the expensive gifts, the luxurious vacations, or the designer clothes. None of it mattered anymore. I started reading again, volunteering at a local school, surrounding myself with people who cared about more than money. I searched for meaning in small things, in kindness, in moments of connection, and I made a promise to myself. I would never again choose money over love. I would never again let fear dictate my decisions. Because in the end, money can buy comfort, but only love can bring true happiness. Do you think Emma learned her lesson? If you were in her place, what would you do differently? Follow for more stories with life lessons.